Okay, Year 11. In part one of this explanation of the paper one for literature, we talked about the first 5 minutes and how you get yourself organised for both essays. You get yourself prepared so the next hour and 40 minutes, next 100 minutes can be used as wisely and effectively. You know you need to write 4 paragraphs minimum as a recommendation, using as much of CALSC as you can in each of those paragraphs to pick up as many of the marks for all 5 of those areas within CALSC. You need to write 4 paragraphs of Romeo and Juliet, 4 paragraphs of Jekyll and Hyde, okay? You also know from the advice from your teachers that the extract is your friend. We know that you're very good at remembering quotations, but we also know that too many people on paper one tend to think, do you know what, I didn't like the extract that much, so I'm going to go for 1 from there and 3 of my own, okay? The exam board are looking for how you use the extract. It's a skill in itself, okay? Now, with this Romeo and Juliet essay on different attitudes to love, it's important to emphasise, and this could be the same for any essay, whether it was on love, whether it was on hate, whether it was on honour, on whatever theme or whatever character, you need to come up with, if you're writing 4 separate paragraphs, you need in your 5 minutes of planning time, you need to come up with 4 separate points, okay? It's no good saying that this quotation shows that Romeo really loves Juliet and saying that this example also shows that Romeo really loves Juliet, because you cannot get the same marks twice. You are not sort of adding further to the layer of arguments, and different suggests that you ought to be able to come up with 4 different ideas about love. Now, firstly, we read the extract to then decide, well, what ideas have come from there, and then from the 5 quotations that we put down from our own memory, we can choose a couple of those that will also work. So skimming through this and not reading the whole thing, again, you can pause it and read for yourselves in more detail with the shared sonnet. But already, I know from the shared sonnet that it's all about religious imagery, the semantic field of religion, okay? There is a lot of reference going on in here to love as a form of faith. And I could choose any example of that, but you've got to choose wisely. You've got to choose the one you could explain most effectively. He's compared Juliet to a holy shrine, for example, and I'm quite tempted by that metaphor, the idea of worshipping her. Okay, he thought he was doing that with Rosaline, but there was a very strong sexual element to that was lust rather than true love. Okay. And I'm tempted by that, and there were plenty of examples there. You could bring in all the references to palmers and palms and Jerusalem and the Holy Land and Palm Sunday, all those references to the ideas. But I like the idea of tying in with the Holy Land of the pilgrim. My lips, 2 blushing pilgrims, ready stand. Keep the quotation short, it doesn't even have to be the full line. But Romeo is comparing, okay, part of his face that is clearly sort of wanting desperately to get closer and more intimate contact with Juliet, because we're phrasing this tactfully for the exam, okay? We're not going to put he wants to snog her face off, even though it's tempting. But my lips are 2 blushing pilgrims. There is that metaphor. Think about why he's used that metaphor and what it's going to lead to in terms of ideas, okay? He's comparing this part of him to somebody who has gone on a long journey to see something remarkable, something miraculous, something amazing, like with the pilgrims who went to the Holy Land to visit shrines and to visit places that were supposed to have a connection to the biblical story, particularly of Jesus. Okay, so it's a pretty strong thing to compare his lips to, and a powerful view of how love has transformed him. So it's love as a faith. We'll come on to how we organise these points in a moment, but I need a different idea. I can't just write, here's another example from the semantic field of religion. So later on in this, and it doesn't matter if it's from the beginning, the middle and end, or the end, and you can take more than this. I would always recommend, like I'm tempted to do, that you highlight 4 or 5 things and again choose the best ones. Okay, so I've mentioned holy palmers because you've got the link to the Holy Land. Okay, we've got this oxymoron of faith turned to despair that's very tempting, and again, if I get time, I may go back to it. But the one that I particularly like with this one is at the end, sin from my lips, O trespass, sweetly urged. He is talking about love in terms of it being a trespass. An illegal act, something that's different to the way that people in society treated love, okay? So it's an oxymoron of sorts because you've got a trespass, which is a negative action or an illegal action, and yet the adverb sweetly that's focused. And if you're not sure about convinced whether it are direct opposites, you could go for how the noun of a trespass is a verb when you're doing it, but here it is a trespass, okay? contrasts with the adverbs, the positive adverb sweetly in terms of this view. We've got two quotes and ideas. And if I now put this towards my plan for Romeo and Juliet, I've got two separate ideas. I've got one quotation which proves the big idea, okay, our allegory part of Kalsk, if you like, is that Shakespeare demonstrates that love can be a form of faith. Okay, it can have a religious significance. It's almost like their love compared to all of the crude sexual references of earlier and all of the boastful young men, my naked weapon is out, okay, sort of, and all of that imagery, which is meant to shock the audience, but love can be a form of religious faith. There's one big idea I've got, and it's illustrated from the extract, and that's my first extract quote, okay, using Kalsk. My second extract quotation that we use is "O trespass, sweetly urged," okay? And it proves the idea that love, in this instance, okay, can be a challenge to the cold, clinical, heartless, I'll go for heartless, business arrangements that were arranged marriages. You know, this is where you can throw in the idea that this is somebody who is going, when they decide to get engaged later that night and marry the next day, they're marrying for love. They're not marrying because their parents are pressuring them into it, okay? Shakespeare himself knew that from experience with his own arranged marriage to Anne Hathaway, not the actress, okay? This is where you can start already to think about where context is going to be happening in this. So we already have two effective extract paragraphs that we could write. There's our big idea. There is our quotation that goes with it. We now need to decide, right, of the quotations we've got, which ones are too similar, which ones won't work in there, okay? You know, I might go for the idea that some people have a cruder view of the physical attraction, like Benvolio suggesting that he should examine other beauties. It's there as a possible. I could go for the Thrier's rather romantic but rather boring view. Look, life's safer if you love moderately. It's wise advice because it stops them being violently passionate and end up dying for love. But I'm not going to go through it on this occasion. I'm going to suggest, firstly, the idea that when Romeo says Juliet is the sun, she's lit up his world. You could throw in other quotations about how his world used to be an artificial night, for example. So if I call this my paragraph from memory or from the rest of the play, however you want to phrase that in your planning, okay? Juliet is the sun. It's the idea that the sun is our source of light and heat. We can't live without it. It dominates our world. It's in a fixed point, something that's unchanging, something that's utterly essential for us. But of course, it's also something we can fly too close to. It's something that we can be burnt by. It's something that can be dangerous. It's something that, although it lasts a very, very long time, and several billion years, okay, eventually it will run out. So from memory, the idea Juliet is the sun. You could take the idea that love can dominate. Love can give us hope and life. But love can also be dangerous. So there's a lot of ideas going on in that quotation. It's what we call an ambiguous quote. It can be interpreted positively and negatively at the same time. Okay, and you can throw in along the way how it's made Romeo change. So there is a third point. This essay is coming together nicely in that we have three different points made about what Shakespeare could be showing: religion, okay, business arrangements, but also sort of a dangerous, intoxicating, sort of all-consuming sort of fire that can destroy in the end, just like it does with Romeo and Juliet. And to link that in, why not look at how love can triumph over death? Okay, if I go for "Oh happy dagger" as my final quotation, and of course we should always be thinking about language techniques. So the personification of the dagger, why is it happy? It's bringing her closer to the love of her life, in addition to the fact that symbolically the alpha female Juliet, okay, you know, whereas her husband died a feminine death by contrast, as it was often associated, taking poison that the apothecary gave him. She is being the alpha male in this circumstance. She is being the Queen Elizabeth's strong character, okay? She is the one who makes the decision to end her life, okay, even with the idea of it being Romeo's dagger that penetrates her and kills her, and there's all kinds of levels on which you can explore that. But we're going to go for "Oh happy dagger" because love can triumph over death. Okay, death is powerful, but love is even more powerful. And at that point, the essay plan for it now has, okay, a range of ideas and quotations. We have a metaphor. We have some personification. We have some imagery from the semantic field of religion. Okay, we have this oxymoron where we can also zoom in on key words. So we know that the L of KALSK, the language, is going to be successful. We have the basis of a very strong essay. This has probably taken a lot longer than the 5 minutes you would spend doing this in the exam, but because we're talking it through. But at this stage, you're 10 minutes into the exam, and you are now ready to write a successful 4-paragraph essay using these quotes, but also throwing in others that you think you could show off with where you get the opportunity.